Hey there, storytellers! Welcome back to my channel and welcome to the second video of November. Today's video is going to be NaNoWriMo inspired, sort of writing inspired. I thought because since I am doing NaNoWriMo, I would set up in front of my desk and my NaNoWriMo calendar where I am doing all my writing and share with you 10 tips for dealing with imposter syndrome. For those of you lucky enough not to struggle with imposter syndrome, it is basically this overwhelming feeling that you're a fraud, that you're sitting there wasting your time doing something that you're never going to be successful at, that you're never going to make part of your actual life, that it's silly and stupid and you're not actually a writer or artist or actor or, name it. Across the board, you can deal with imposter syndrome. So if you've been lucky enough not to deal with that anxiety, kudos to you. Let me know your secrets because your girl gets it. So without any further ado, let's get into my tips for dealing with imposter syndrome. Tip number 1, use affirmations as part of your writing routine and create one if you haven't yet. If you are someone who deals with imposter syndrome, sort of coming up with your own affirmations might be good, it might work for you, but if you're someone who needs sort of a little external feedback, then I recommend some actual affirmation cards. I have this deck called Affirmators Creativity Deck, and there's 50 cards, and this one kind of goes across the creativity board. It's not just writing, so it's great if you're an artist or an actor or just like to work some creativity into your life. And I'll show you what they look like. These are pretty cute and colorful. I very much enjoy, but they have all kinds of things. Curiosity, my truth, rough drafts, all kinds of stuff you might need when working on creative endeavors or just being more creative in general. And their sort of recommendation for using them is that you just spread them out in a big chaotic pile and pick whatever one calls to you with your eyes closed and follow that for the day, which I think is probably the best way to go about creativity, is being a little chaotic. And my next deck is called the Write Now deck, and this one has a bunch of writing specific affirmations, which are great for someone like me who is in fact a writer. So we have each word I write is progress. I have faith in the writing journey I am on, all kinds of stuff like that. And of course, these are also rainbowy and colorful as well, because as you can tell, I like things that are really colorful and bright. They help get my mind in a positive space to get creative juices flowing. So I recommend working some affirmations, whether your own or ones that are created for you, into your writing routine. And having a writing routine on its own is going to make you feel more like a professional writer, because don't they have one? This segues pretty nicely into tip number 2, which is to remember that you're allowed to call yourself a writer, whether you are any kind of published at all. If you're not, you're still a writer. If you are, you're still a writer. It's something you either do or do not do. You either spend time writing and thinking about stories that you want to create, or you don't. And that's okay if you're not somebody who writes. This video is probably not for you, so I don't know why you're watching it. But if you're a writer, you're allowed to call yourself one, regardless of whether or not you're published. Tip number 3, acknowledge your doubts and then release them. And I have a couple tips for releasing them within this main tip, because I think it's really important that you acknowledge your doubts. If you sit there and deny, they're going to come back up because you're just shoving them under the surface. You have to let them rise, and you have to look at them and confront them for what they are, and then you can let them go. And I think some of the best ways to do that, if you're somebody who likes to keep things a little bit private and you don't want to talk, I would recommend journaling. You can just sit there and say, I feel like a fraud today, here's why, and then you can kind of sit there, and once you get that thought out of your head, you can look at it and start going, no, I'm not a fraud, I just wrote 10,000 words today, what am I talking about? You know, it's one sort of external way to get your thoughts literally physically out of your head. Or if you're somebody who needs to work with other people or prefers to work alongside other people, having a writing group or just a writing partner or just a friend that understands that these are your goals to sort of talk to and bounce your thoughts against and let them sort of say, what are you talking about, can help you kind of click that gear in your head that says, you're being silly, which sometimes imposter syndrome is you're just being silly and you know it and you just can't get around it yourself. So doing something to acknowledge and release your thoughts can help. That segues nicely into tip number 4, which is join a writing community. Writing itself is a solitary act for the most part, but every writer struggles and you don't need to do that alone. If you want the community of a big group, you can join NaNoWriMo and get matched up with people just sort of across the world, or you can come up with your own writing group if you happen to know a group of friends that likes to do it, or you can just find a writing partner to give you a sense of community, just somebody else who knows, really truly knows what you're going through and what your struggle is, or a writing mentor. I would recommend a writing mentor. Reach out to somebody, see if they'll mentor you. But just anything to sort of give you that sense of I'm not alone is going to help you get past your imposter syndrome. Tip number 5, do not compare your progress and struggles to anyone else, especially not to published authors. They're in a different part of the process than you are, and comparing yourself to them is not going to help. Do not compare yourself to other unpublished authors because they're in their own process. Each process of writing and editing and publishing or not publishing or sharing in some different way is very unique to you as a writer, and comparing yourself is not going to help. I know it's easier said than done, so here I am, somebody else telling you not to do it. And I would say you can use this sort of hand in hand with that journaling or talking to a friend that I mentioned earlier, in terms of it's something that we all tend to unintentionally do, where we compare ourselves to somebody else that we want to be like, that we admire, and then we use it to sort of give negative feedback to ourselves. And rather than doing that, say, this is where I want to go. And then I would recommend, if they have published a book about writing, read it. Because then you can say, this is what they went through. It's okay for me to go through this. I want to be like them. It's okay if I go through the same things or if I go through different things. We all go through different things at different times in different ways. So just don't use it to give yourself negative feedback. Find a way to spin it and say, this author is where I want to be and they've gone through struggles as well. Use it to remind yourself that everyone struggles, rather than saying I'm a failure for struggling and they're perfect because they're published. Tip number 6, this is some more introspection for you. Get to the heart of your fears and doubts. This is another thing that journaling helps with, because you really need to sit there and examine the hearts of your fears and doubts. Why am I afraid to sort of put myself out there? Why am I afraid to show other people my work? Why am I afraid that whatever I write isn't ever going to be good enough for myself, for somebody else, for anything? Sit there and write out what your doubts are, and then really think about why those are your doubts, and then sort of create an action plan, which is really what step 6 is examine what your doubts are and create an action plan, because chances are there are things you can do to sort of combat them or avoid them entirely if you sit there with a calm mind. Just give yourself time to process, and there's probably some things you can do to sort of combat your doubts. I don't think you'll ever not be a little bit doubtful, because I think that's just the name of the game when you're a writer, but I think you can work through it. Tip number 7, this is another one that's going to be hard for some people, but that is when things get unproductively overwhelming. Allow yourself to take a step back and not do any writing at all. If you're not in a good headspace to be creative, your creative process is going to be hard. It's going to be like swimming in a stream uphill. You're going to be fighting yourself and your work, and nothing's going to mesh, and it's just going to feel like it's all crap anyway. So just give yourself time to step back, rest away from your writing, just let your head clear. Do whatever it is you like to do to unwind and relax. Take a walk, take a bath, read a book, watch a TV show, cook something, whatever you like. Just give yourself time away from physically doing any writing, and just let the story leave your mind for a little bit until you can come back to it clear-headed. And I know that's easier said than done, but again, you're going to be working upstream here. It's not going to go the way you want if you're battling yourself when you're just overwhelmed with life and where you want your story to go, but you can't get it to go where you want it to go, and other things in the holidays. Just chill. Just let it be and come back to it. Tip number 8 is keep a list of all your writing accomplishments, no matter how small and insignificant you might think they are. Do not let yourself convince yourself that they are small and insignificant, because they're not. Writing is hard in any kind of quantity. So if you have, I hit 1,000 words, or I hit 500 words, or even just 100 words on the page towards your story is a start. And no matter how big or small your writing goals are hard to meet. So if you're accomplishing them, if you've planned your characters, or if you've done your world building, or if you just have an idea that you're excited about, it's an accomplishment. Put it down on a piece of paper where you can see it, maybe near your other NaNoWriMo stuff if you're doing it, just to remind yourself that you are making progress, that you are accomplishing things as a writer. That way you have positive reinforcement for yourself to combat any negative reinforcement that your brain might be trying to send your way. Tip number 9 is hold yourself to a high standard, but don't weaponize it. It's okay to have big, lofty goals and say, I want to be the next X author. I want to be the next Tolkien, let's say. I want to publish a huge fantasy epic that changes the world, that lasts for years to come, that people enjoy, that inspires movies and careers, and just makes the world electrified with creativity that I created. It's okay to have that goal. It's almost encouraged to have that goal, because what else are you reaching for if not to share your creativity with the world, or just to have that creativity sort of in a physical form for you. If you're writing a book just to write a book for yourself, that's okay too. Set your goals as high as you want, but don't weaponize them if you haven't met them in the time span, like say you are trying to be the next Tolkien. Don't weaponize that if you haven't reached his level of success in the time frame that he did it. You're not him. Don't hold yourself to that. Just say, I want to be that, and then work for it. And don't let anything else get in the way. Have that list of, accomplishments. Have your lists of doubts in how you can combat them. Just have your strategies ready to combat the fact that your brain is going to try to weaponize that lofty goal, because let's be honest, it will. If you have a really lofty goal, your brain's going to try to tear you down for not meeting it as soon as it thinks you should be meeting it. And the name of the game with writing is it's a pretty long haul. You usually have to do a lot of work before you even touch the realm of starting to even consider looking for an agent, who then has to do a lot of work to even get somebody to consider publishing your book. And then there's still more work. So publishing a book takes a while, and it's okay for it to take a while for you too. And tip number 10 is going to sound a little bit weird. I will admit that. But I would recommend that you take solace in that there are essentially no new thoughts under the sun. Writing and stories that do well, the ones that really hit the readers in the right spots, are based on readers connecting with like experiences and like feelings. Even if the setting and the world building is weird and out there and totally different from the world that they know, the actual character development and stuff that people connect to that keep them coming back to stories is all the same. That's why there are tropes and cliches, and why, a girl releases a breath even though she didn't know she was holding it. I know, we all hate it. But it's there because people connect to that, and it's real, and it happens in real life. And that's what people connect to, is the real things from real life that are interwoven in these great fantasy epics or sci-fi epics, or, these crazy out there, no one would ever do that contemporary novels. That's what we're connecting to, is the realness of it. So recognize that the human experience, while incredibly varied in different cultures and different customs and all kinds of things, the sort of universal emotional human experience is fairly similar across the board. We all react to different things differently, which is what makes your characters unique, but the fact that they are going through struggles and emotionally reacting to them is going to be what connects a reader to it. And it's okay for it not to be as original as you might want it to be, because people are connecting to things. They want to relate to your characters. So don't make your characters unrelatable, if that makes sense. It's okay not to have your character be totally original in the sense of maybe they're a person with anxiety and they hold their breath without realizing it. It's okay. You know, I know we like to make fun of something like that, but it's part of what makes characters great. So allow yourself the freedom to know that, you know, somebody's already thought of Lord of the Rings. Somebody's already thought of The Hunger Games. Somebody's already thought of Dune. It's okay. It's okay that your world might be similar or your characters might be similar, because maybe this is your first story and you're pulling from inspirational stories that you've read, that you love, that you related to, and that's okay. At some point, when you're working this story, it's going to become your own, and it's going to become unique and beautiful in its own way. It just won't seem like it at first. So it's okay to recognize that there are no new thoughts under the sun. It's just how you use them that's going to make them yours. But that is it for this video. If you enjoyed it, let me know by leaving a like down below. And if you have any tips for combating imposter syndrome, share them with me and everyone else down in the comments as well. For now, I'm going to get going. If you want to keep up with me and all of my bookish adventures, you can go ahead and click the subscribe button. And of course, I highly recommend that you ring the little bell, because it notifies you every time I post a new video, which in November is going to be my Friday schedule. So I will see you guys next week with a new one. Bye!